Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are down by Sligachan with an unusually beautiful evening, and fingers crossed, some beautiful images. Because it's been so beautiful recently, all the water levels have changed really dramatically. So that means that it's given so many more opportunities for interesting foregrounds.
Woke up from a whisper, collared shirt down by my...
Due to the water levels being so low, what I'm finding is a lot of mess, a lot of clutter, a lot of boulder gardens, which make it really hard to find simplistic photography. So I'm going to keep on walking up, and fingers crossed the next location, the one that I've got in mind, is going to pay off a little bit better. But look at them mountains. Aren't they absolutely incredible? So pretty. I think I may have found my first composition. What I'm really liking about this scene is getting quite close to these waterfalls and really getting a perspective of big versus bigger, but them being quite muted against each other, quite similar in size in the perspectives. And I'm getting a beautiful side light coming across the mountains right now as the sun is going down. So I've got my camera all set up now, and first of all what I did is I put on my polarizer to really cut some of that glare off, because the light is so harsh on them highlights. It sort of cuts through them and minimizes the glare so I can get more detail and color in that. Then I put my medium grad filter on the front, and that's what that's going to do, is that's going to darken off them highlights so I can have a more balanced image, and that's going to save me from having to do bracketing and stuff like that. For the focusing for this image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the highest point of the image. I'm going to zoom right in until I can see it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my aperture so it's nice and shallow, and then as I focus I can make sure the point that I want to be focused is pin sharp. And then as I close my aperture back to f11, then I can worry about how I'm exposing my image. So what I'm using for the exposure of the image, I'm looking at my histogram and I'm finding out, making sure none of my highlights in this column are blown out and none of my shadows are blown out in this one. I've got it on a 2-second timer. I have got this really irritating tree there, but I reckon I can get rid of that in post. With a 2-second timer, boom, look at that. Zoom in to check that it's nice and sharp. And that is looking absolutely beautiful. Now all I'm going to do for my next shot is I'm going to pan down so I'm capturing more of this water and this interest, and then I'm going to photograph that, and then in Photoshop and Lightroom I'll put them together and make one big image. And that is looking absolutely beautiful.
Was warm before we drove. Breakfast fresh on the stove. She walked out with the floral blouse. Back then, everyone was near.
Now it's time to go find the next composition.
Woke up from an overrun.
So I've come to my second composition, and I've photographed this one already in better conditions, and I will show you the one from before, but I'm still going to photograph it because I really like the foreground. So for my foreground I've got this beautiful leading line of water sort of held by two rocks on either side, and that guides straight over to one of the coolings, the big mountain in the background that you should be able to see just over here. And it was looking beautiful, and it is looking beautiful today, but the day that I photographed it before, I had all of these clouds, all of these drama, all of these interesting things going on, and then one spot of light, and it looked absolutely amazing. And I'll show you that image now. But I'm still going to try and capture that image, the one that I really like. There is something else that I'm not keen about this composition, and that's that little single tree. I'm not sure if you can see it on the GoPro, but there's a little single tree just poking out the side. On the image that I've taken before, I've already edited that out, and I think that's probably what's going to happen again now. So for this image, I've decided to flip my camera into portrait, and I've zoomed in a little bit to try and cut out all the distractions to make it simple. And I think because the rocks are so close to my camera and the mountains are so far away, I'm going to have to use a technique called focus stacking. But I still think this is going to be a beautiful image, and this might be the image that I come back to when the sky kicks off. So to focus stack this image, what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to get my foreground. So I'm going to bring it nice and close, and I'm going to zoom in on this point here, and I'm going to have a look at it, and I'm going to see when it gets nice and sharp. So I think that right there, there we are, that's beautifully sharp. And then I'm going to take an image, check my histogram, make sure it's all good, that is looking beautiful, and fire that off. And that is looking absolutely beautiful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my little marker up onto the mountain, and I'm going to zoom in again, and I'm going to make that beautifully sharp. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. And I'm going to fire that image off again, checking my histogram. So now all I'm going to do now is get that into Lightroom, and I'll use the nice and sharp foreground, the nice and sharp background, blend them together and have a beautiful image sharp all the way through. Well, that's the plan anyway. But I think this might be the image that I come back to later to photograph again. But I think it's time to see if we can go find anything else. So I think I found my next interesting piece of water, and I don't normally shoot downstream, but for this I think I'll make an exception. So if I can get out far enough without falling flat on my ass, this is going to be my foreground leading out. I've got this lovely circle of bubbles off to the right here, and that's going to lead straight up into this huge triangular mountain. And I think that'll look beautiful. But what I'm really struggling with right now is how midges are coming, how slippery these rocks really are. I may head further upstream and come around and chill out on this rock over here to get that image. maybe. Because I don't fancy falling into the water. Not even a little bit. So this image might possibly be my favourite one so far. It just has such a nice balance from start to finish. The way I've got a double tiered waterfall leading into a nice flat section of water, which is almost mirroring the mountain. And the mountain is such a beautiful colour. It's so orange, so vibrant. There's only one thing missing, and that is some clouds above it. But you can't have it all. I always have clouds on the Isle of Skye, and I moan about them 90% of the time. The first time I don't have it, I'm still moaning. So for this image, the first thing I did is I got the camera nice and leveled. I know it's moving backwards and forwards, but it's level enough for me. I'm happy with that. The next thing I did is I put on this square. So on either side, I've got these rocks on either side of the waterfall, and they're helping balance the image. And then straight up through the middle of the mountain is I've got this line here. And that's again nice and symmetrical. So I've almost got a giant triangle going from either side up into the top of the mountain. I go on to my next section. I've checked out my histogram. All of the shadows are not too far gone, and the highlights are well away from being too far gone. I always prefer to shoot slightly underexposed because I find you can play a lot more around with the shadows than you can the highlights. So now with a 2-second timer, F16, 2.5 of a second, firing that off. And there we are. So that is looking absolutely stunning. There's just one thing missing, and that is the interest in the sky. So I'm going to change my composition slightly. Because the sky is such a dead space and there's really nothing going on, I'm going to drop my camera down and get rid of that dead space and add a little bit more value in the water. So it's nice and simple. And now I've lowered everything down, it's going to look so much better. So now I've taken that image, and I'll show you the comparison between having that big chunk of blank blue sky versus lowering it and getting a little bit more of that water, that silky smooth beautiful water. But it has come to that time where I've got to find the final composition, the one that is going to give the best result. Is it going to be 1, 2 or 3, or should I go find something completely different? I don't know yet. So to truly decide on which of the mountains I want to capture pretty much depends on how much cloud is above it / how much cloud do I think is going to stay there. So at the moment this mountain has zilch, the side of it has nothing. This mountain over here has got promise of maybe a bit of cloud coming above it, but over here this is where the main of my cloud, and I just love the way the light casts shadows and highlights on this one. But I'm not sure about that waterfall at the bottom. But I'm going to risk it because I photographed the other ones, so I'm going to make my way back down to that first waterfall, and fingers crossed the risk pays off. Now that I'm back, I think I need to try and work out something slightly different. I don't want the same composition as before. So I'm going to take my camera off my tripod and have a little walk around. So for this composition, it is quite similar. I couldn't seem to find the right balance in a different way. I would have really have liked to get this big circle of bubbles involved, but this big rock here is just in the way. It just in the way, so I can't really capture that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to do a focus stack to make sure everything's perfect. I'm going to capture the water now, and then I'm going to capture the mountains with this glow, and then later on when the sky lights up, I'm going to capture that and hopefully be able to blend that all together and make it look not too unusual. So this is going to be my base exposure. Just checking my histogram, making sure all is well. I've got that on L10, F11, and that's given me a 6-second exposure with my soft edge grad filter, medium, and my polarizer. So I'm going to fire that off, and this is going to be my base exposure. So that is my waterfalls, and I've still managed to capture them beautiful bits down here. I'm going to check to see how sharp that's looking, but that is looking pretty sweet. Yep, I am very happy with them results. So now all I need to do is to pan up and take my second exposure. So this is going to be my second exposure now. Checking my histogram. That's looking perfect. Fire that one off. And look at that. That is looking beautiful. Just going to check to see how sharp that is. Look up into the mountains. Oh, looking a bit soft. So I am going to refocus that image. And that is my second attempt now. So I'm just going to zoom in. And look at the difference. That is incredible. I'm so glad that I resharpened that. So now all I need to do is to wait for that cloud above the mountain to capture fire and to avoid these midges. The midges are finally here and they are out with a vengeance. They're eating me so bad. You even got one on the lens. But I'm going to set you up with a little bit of a time lapse so you can watch it change as I do. So I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. I have finished shooting, I've captured my final image. I didn't change any settings really. One thing I did find though, my polarizer was making some really nasty banding. So I had to really reduce the polarization to sort of make sure the whole sky was one colour. But I finished here and I hope you've enjoyed my little exploration of a beautiful evening on the Isle of Skye. A very unusually beautiful evening. But I'm glad I was here to be able to share it with you. I hope you have a lovely weekend and you get out and take your camera out, and I hope you have beautiful evenings just like this. Hopefully with a little bit less midgie though. The midgies are getting bad. Won't be long until I'm wearing one of them hoods, I'm sure. But anyway, I'll see you next time.